packet pushers.
Hello, and welcome to the Network Automation Nerds podcast, where we explore the latest in network automation from a practitioner's perspective. I'm your host, Eric Cho, a network engineer who loves everything about network automation. Today, we have the pleasure of hosting Wim Gerrits and Pieter van Os, the co-founders of Slurp'it and Netpicker. Slurp'it is all about simplifying network inventory discovery, and Netpicker works hard to validate the network design, compliance, and security of your networks. In this episode, we'll dive deep into the journey that brought Wim and Pieter together, explore the inspiration behind Slurp'it and Netpicker, and learn how they have navigated the challenges and triumphs of all these network discovery, validation. I know we're going to have a great time. So welcome to the show, Wim and Pieter.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eric.
Nice to have us.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming. I mean, we've collaborated on other projects, so we're not strangers, right? But this is the first time you've been on the show, and I've come across you guys' work frequently, especially in the last few years. So why don't we just start with kind of your origin story, right? How did you came about as being in the place where you are, founding companies and doing all these awesome projects? I know if we give the mic to Wim, you would never get any airtime, Peter. So I think what we should do is we should start with you, Peter.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Give us your origin story.
It's the same like when you're in the middle of something and I'm like focusing and then Wim calls. I'm like, ooh, if I pick up now, I'm going to lose the next hour.
Thank you, guys.
So sometimes I just reject and I say like, I'll call you back later. Or can you maybe just text me what you want?
Now he knows.
Now he knows.
You still call me back though.
Yeah, I call you back, of course. So I'm in the networking field, I think now for the last 12, 15 years.
Mhm.
And after high school, it's not high school, it's University of Applied Science in the Netherlands, actually.
Mhm.
I did an internship at the Dutch bank. My vision was always like, okay, I have to do my last internship in like a big corporate company because it's difficult to get in. But if I do my internship there and I can prove myself, what I can do and that I like to learn and that I'm quick, then they might offer me a job.
Mhm.
That's actually what happened. So I did my final internship at a Dutch bank and I started to grow there as like a second line network engineer. And when I arrived there was this product called NetEase, which they used for network automation. So they had like quite a small front desk, like 6-ish people. And they did everything already like intent based with NetEase, but the product was quite complex. Like you needed to know SQL a little bit and scripting and stuff. So I dove in and I made myself a bit common with it. And yeah, that's how I actually met Wim because Wim was the CEO of NetEase. I don't know, Wim, you want to follow up a little bit? Like,
Oh, you were the key user. I loved it. I mean, yeah.
I sense a lot of bromance here, man.
Well, yes.
the thing is, like, the product was very early for its time.
Yeah.
It already had like the intent-based networking. It had a kind of overlay where you could fill a database with like network code, but you had to write something they called like a service type. So for example, if I would create a router or a switch, like virtually wise, I had to create like 50 steps. Like, okay, I had to locate a site, I had to create a management IP, I had to assign it. So we standardized the whole thing. So if a new branch office would be rolled out, I just had to click like create new site. And if the site was Amsterdam and it was already a site in Amsterdam, it would automatically go from 1 to 2, for example. And then I could choose like network designs, like, okay, is it a single core? Is it a redundant core? Is it U-shaped? So access switches in a stack, or is there one access switch which goes to the 2 cores? We call it like V-shaped. But that whole process of like automatically creating the devices.
Modeling, right?
Yeah, modeling, we called it, like assigning data in the database. That was all quite complex because you had to write queries, you had to understand data a little bit, you had to put in like the SuperNet IP the IPAM plans in that system as well. So a lot of people found it like they were a little bit scared of touching the system. And I actually liked it. So I did that for like 5 years and we were internally training people. And that's how I met Wim. And yeah, we did all kinds of projects, rollout projects. And then it was the moment that my wife is French. And we always said like, okay, the first place where we're going to live together is not in France, not in the Netherlands, because we both have our habits there, So we have to go a place where we all have to start from scratch.
A third neutral place.
Exactly. So she got a job offer in Vienna, which is Austria.
Okay.
So I was like, okay, cool. I've been 5 years at Rabobank. It's time for me to move on, to try something new. So we both moved to Vienna.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got in contact with Wim, like, okay, if I cannot find a job here, can I remotely work for you
You didn't do that in that year.
No, I didn't do it because it's really crazy, but I didn't want to stay home and work remotely. I was like, I need to be with people. I have to go to the office. And nowadays you cannot imagine. But back then I was like, I don't want that. I want to see people. I want to talk to people.
Right.
So I started to work there for a firm which was specialized in radio communication for airplanes. It was called Frequentis. And what we did is like we designed, it's like one of those niche companies. They're everywhere, but you don't know they're there. So we did worldwide deployments of airfield communications. So even if a plane arrives in a country, like you have circles, kind of we call it, like zones, and one zone from another zone, like airplanes are kind of like dropped over. And those systems we built there with our own hardware, protocols, everything. And I did that for a year. It was actually a lot of fun. And then I've got a job offer on a French island. And I was like, okay, in France, I'm never, ever, ever going to find a job if you don't speak the language. Like it's this country. No offense to all the French people. I love your country, but you need to speak French.
I mean, you married one, so really it's like you have no bias toward them.
No, but you need to be, it's if you do a Cisco exam, there's Japanese, there's Chinese, there's Spanish,
Sure.
there's French, sometimes German and English. And that's normally it. So it's like one of those countries where you need to speak the language properly to be able to have a job.
Sure.
So I contacted Wim as Wim. I'm ready. I want to work remotely for you. And that's where it started.
It was COVID time, which was great because you needed to have a remote job. And I was only looking for remote.
And it seems like you were ahead of your time, Wim, at the time, right? Because, maybe we could go into a little bit like declarative versus procedural, where declarative is, kind of intent based, where procedural is like, hey, here's how you do A, B, C, and D, and then, very planned out. But it seems like, you were ahead of your time. So maybe we could, switch gear and talk about your origin story and how did you come about, maybe the things that would lead up to founding Slurp'it as well as Netpicker.
Sure. It's a long time back, actually.
How long do we have?
No, I will keep it short. But I mean, I started my career, I did business degree. So I have no networking technology background at all when I started. And I started at a company called Cabletron Systems. I'm not sure people know it.
I've heard of Cabletron, yeah.
Yeah, it was big. New Hampshire. I got trained in the US and it was like as big as Cisco at the time. And actually Cisco didn't have switching. So we used the routing modules in the chassis and all the backbone switches. And it was a big company. So you had 3Com, which became HP, and you had Cisco. Cisco ended up winning the whole battle. But anyway, I started 5 years doing that. I wanted to get out of the hardware sales, and I moved to a company, an American company called International Network Services. It came from Lucent in the days, and it was one of the best global network consultancy firms. And they had a couple of practices and very productized, one of them being network management. So I was basically responsible for the delivery of a team of like 15 to 20 network engineers in the Netherlands. I basically had to get them billing and do projects. And one of the customers was Rabobank. That's really how it all started. And we started implementing tools like Micromuse, actually, and like monitoring. So they built a new NOC. That was really how it started. So when they built a NOC and they hired us to build the processes and the tools and document the whole thing, one thing was lacking was basically how to roll out automatically 1,600 branches like in a week or two. And they wanted to have some database and some automated templates that you can merge together and then also a deployment engine to actually push it out to the sites. That was the first project. So they went from a very cooperative bank, which was very decentralized, became centralized IT management. And that's how it started. So all credits to one of the colleagues in my team that actually I basically contracted to the bank. And in-house, he developed Eric. All credits to Eric IJsbeert in this. He started developing in-house the tool for Rabobank, and it grew over time. So when Pieter came, I think we did like 20 projects over a period of 10 years in-house, from running out branch offices to data center networks to migration from 3Com to Cisco to replacing the hardware to HP. At the moment, we're doing another project for Wi-Fi and SD-WAN. It's still happening. But after 10 years, basically, they ended up, well, actually, the company was bought by British Telecom, INS, the American company. And the Rabobank was feeling like, oh man, we are so depending on the tool. And we just had hired people, contractors. And they said, well, PT didn't go and support that tool anymore. So it took me a year to talk about and said, why don't I start a company called NetEyes? And basically you give me all the IPRs or make a formal contract. It took about a year to do the legal terms on the whole deal. And that's how I started. So I got official owner rights, which was them. They gave it to us. They became our first like 3 to 5 year customer. And that's how we started basically. But everything we did initially was around this concept of like, hey, I have a database and I have templates and I can model like objects and sites and switches and IP plans. And then we saw, okay, we also need to have config backups and we also need to have compliance. So we ended up with this like colossal platform, which in the end, sort of after 10 years being like the company NetEyes, we felt like we really need to start over. And so 2 years ago, when we came to a dead end in terms of the product development of the platform NetEyes, to give you an idea, it was backend with Perl, and it was like all the vendor modules we built and maintained ourselves. And in the last 5 years, as you know, Eric, there's been a huge development in the open source community. Kirk Bayer with NetMiko is just one of them. There's TextFSM. There's like hundreds of templates from network to code and all that stuff. And I was a big like believer, like we should find a way to start fresh, also modernize technology for using Docker and lightweight application that can scale easily and all that stuff. So Pieter was the first at making things modular. Pieter came to me actually. He's like, well, I already built in the past some tool that does the discovery. Let's start from scratch building this. And we ended up actually spinning up a separate company, even Slurp'it, which Pieter really developed. But the philosophy is identical to Netpicker. So we said, okay, let's make modular solutions. Slurp'it is basically using NetMiko under the hood. It's using open source libraries. It's using Docker. It's using repositories that we can use and contribute to.
Yeah, we tried to make some kind of hybrid model, right?
Yeah.
Because we talked to Kirk a couple of times, like, okay, we want to do this. Do you mind? And our idea is like, okay, let's use open source and provide back where possible. So if we somehow can make money, we can put our developers on it as well to have it improve, to speed up things, and so on. So we try to take and give back. That's our philosophy a little bit, what we want to do.
Yeah, but I find that story kind of interesting, Wim, is that you actually started a company that was profitable because you already have a customer, right? Like you have a predictable stream, at least on the baseline. You own the IP.
Yeah.
And it's almost like a good monopoly that to have, right? Because then you're the COBOL developer that have all these like legacy things, but you decided that it's better to start over. It's not, great to continue to have this, I want to say cash cow, but maybe it's not, but I don't know, right? But it's predictable stream.
It wasn't actually. So, I mean, Pieter knows this really well. I mean, we got like projects and proof of concepts all over the globe. I mean, we're like big and small companies. And at the time we were promoting, you can go back, we got the Gartner Cool Vendor Award in 2020 or so on this concept of intent-based networking. But the market, I was trying to sell like this philosophy like Netbox and Naudibot are doing with, hey, you have a database, you can define your intent, you have this design modeling and the IPAM and templates, and you can create golden configs. At the time that we started actually trying to sell this, our demo slot was like 2 hours or so to demo the product, and nobody was buying because everybody was like, well, but can you also do discovery? Because we have no clue what is out there.
The product was so big because it has been growing over the last 10 years. And every time they wanted a feature, we added it. And the complexity was really high. Like you really needed to dive in to understand it. But if you did, it was amazing. Like you could roll out branches, everything automatically. There was literally zero touch provisioning. Everything was in there. But the learning curve was so high that some big companies said like, yeah, we kind of get like a vendor lock because we have to train our people to understand your product. Then we have to put everything in your tool. And if we want to switch one day, it's difficult. So I had this over and over and over and over. That's when I told Wim, like, we have to prepare a proper demo. So together with Wim, we invented something we called pillars. So there are 4 pillars.
Journey, right?
Yeah, journey, network automation journey. And there were 4 pillars. You start at the bottom with backups because everybody needs backups. Then the next pillar was like compliance. So you have backups and then you start validating like based on your backups, like, hey, is everything in my network good? When you have that, then you can go into the next step, network automation. So then you have the first 3, and those 3 were easy to explain and easy to implement, which was for us good. And then the 4th pillar is intent-based networking. And that requires like a bit more effort and learning curve and so on. So this way we could easily like pitch it and sell it, but also leave things out. So a lot of times we came like, okay, we have backups. And they were like, okay, yeah, but we have Rancid and we have SolarWinds and we have this and we have this. I was like, yeah, okay, but we have it too. So this pillar story made us explain to them like, okay, you don't have to use everything. We give you everything, but you use what you want. And after doing that for a year, I told Wim like, okay, we just have to take everything apart and go to people and like, okay, what do you have? Do you have now? Okay. Do you have backups? No. Okay. Well, with NetPicker, you can do the backups. Do you have compliance? No. Okay. And you have compliance. So this way we can just pitch and deliver what's missing in their own automation circle.
Right.
And that's where it came a little bit from, this pillar thing.
That's where you come in, right? Like, I think the product is so much more than just a technology. It's not just about, Python or Perl or databases. I mean, it's about that, but it's also about how do you get the users to adopt? How do you do the learning curve? I mean, it looks really beautiful on the other side of the mountain, but you still need to cross it over, and having a roadmap and having a way in.
Absolutely.
So yeah, why don't you tell us a little bit about your thoughts on when Peter came in and go, no, we got to compartmentalize, we got to have these four pillars. What were your thoughts?
I was actually dying to go there, but
You're like, I thought you would never ask.
yeah, exactly. But it's challenging if you have like the technology and like the code, and we have like, let's say 500,000 lines of code, and you maintained it. And then some customers, the implementation is like some pieces are custom integrations into service. We have like a few large service providers, and once you start integrating into OSS and BSS tools, it becomes, well, I mean, it's not like, oh, I'm going to sell like 1,000 licenses over the next 3 years or so, right? So this is really what I had in mind. I had envisioned like, at some stage, the network automation industry or the engineering community is gonna need like productized tools, like for monitoring, like you have SolarWinds or you have all the other tools that are, they do a good job. For network automation, it was like a lot of hobby bobby projects. So network engineers build stuff and then they leave. And then the
Mhm.
next guy is like, oh man, I have this script here that does something, discovery, or it is some tool that creates templates or Excel sheets with 20 sheet tabs, right? Sheets in there. So we've seen it all. And so NetEyes was grown too big to become easy to sell. So not only that I like the story of Peter, like we should modernize it and make it modular, I think we both had the same feeling like we should turn the whole go-to-market upside down. So let me explain this. Like in the old days of NetEyes, I was calling and we had meetings and following up on a few leads, like not like a huge amount. But we had to demo the product and we had to find the manager to see if there's budget.
Right.
Nowadays, I mean, we have like up to 2,000 downloads we had in the last year or so on the products because it somehow was easy to download. It followed a thing that the open source community knows about. So it's available on Git. You find the link on our website, you download it. There's a free version. It already brings value. And so we're not selling anymore. We're basically supporting, and out of it come leads and customers,
Mm.
which is a second thing that we learned that we couldn't do the old way because we're not VC funded company. So we can't hire 5 or 10 sales guys or marketing or pay for events. So we needed to find a way to do things differently.
Right.
Not only technology, but go to market wise. And the third component, I think rightly what you said, Eric, like we've learned how difficult it is if you sell like a platform. And there's still vendors out there, right, that have a bigger sort of approach than we take at the moment. You need to train people how to use it. And it needs a culture change on how to collaborate on certain things, naming conventions and using templates, all that. And that's really hard. So yeah, let's give them something that they can use and it just works and it can work together and they can still within that product, like with Slurp'it, there's like huge flexibility on how to do things yourself, but it builds upon things like TextFSM and these kind of things. So we try to learn from all the heartaches over the years, to be honest, as well. But yeah, we did have customers that got us started and funded, but now I think we're able to scale.
We see the difficulty as well because we do have people used to what we call the old way saying like, okay, but why are two products? Why is not everything in one? And then we're like, yeah, we did that. And it was very difficult. So now we try to approach it as a multi-service way where you spin up what you need and have it all integrated seamlessly.
There's going to be a third one, right? Because, like next year, we're coming out with a third product, modular way to do the automation piece as well. So discovery, then validation, Netpicker, and automation. But also sometimes you have to make decisions that NetEyes had also a database like Netbox and like Naudibot.
Not had, it still has and it works.
It still has, right? Our customers that are using it, it still has. We're not promoting it anymore or selling it anymore because why not just partner with something which is like huge user group out there? And so, Peter, you can explain what you did with all the plugins with Slurp'it. I think that's a huge success story.
But that's also a good example. Like people who have nothing, like just Excel sheets, there we could easily sell NetEyes and they would use it. But the community out there, they have a source of truth. And then we arrive with our product with the source of truth in there. And then we had to build all kind of syncers to have like the data between the systems. And that's also a reason why we say, okay, there is a market already for source of truth. There are products out there. Let's not focus on that. Let's integrate with them. Let everybody pick their favorite source of truth and we just integrate with it. Yeah, I think so far that's pretty successful.
Yeah, but also there wasn't a really good discovery tool. So I think you did an awesome job, Peter.
Yeah, we had it on our wish list for NetEyes for a long time. Like, okay, how can we get all
Yeah.
the data into there? Because every customer had a brownfield network and it was quite a pain to have everything onboarded. So we're like, okay, yeah. So I told Wim at a certain point, okay, I have written this product 8 years ago
At Rabo, yeah.
at
Yeah.
Rabobank, and I want to start from scratch with the existing technologies and so on, modern architecture. Shall we do that? And we must immediately like, yes, let's do that. And I've learned over the time that building software is not the problem. Selling software is the problem. So when you have an idea and you create something, align with somebody who can sell it, who has a network, who can help you out. If you don't have a VC and you want to do it traditionally, you need to have a good partner to do that. So that's why I told Wim, like I told Wim, it's like what you started with, Eric. When Wim starts talking, he doesn't stop. I need that.
And I'm just joking, right, Wim? We love you.
I love it. I love it. The best sales guy is Peter, actually, because he can talk technology.
Peter just like, I don't want to sell it to you. And then people were like, where do I sign the check, right? Because I know you don't want to sell it to me, but hey, there's a good product and we need to write a PO for it. But there's so many good things that I want to double tap into what you said about, right? Because it's not just about the technology. You think, as Peter mentioned, writing software is relatively easy. It's a solved problem, but indicating values and then that go to market on instead of like a waterfall outreach, then you have this go to market where people could just download the software, get value from it, and you may be offering, I don't know, like 4 or 5 times more value than you capture. But hey, that is enough, right? Like you're offering 80% value and you're only capturing 20%. That's okay because your base is so much bigger. So I love that mentality. And that comes from the fact that you want to break things down. The monolithic software doesn't work. So now you're breaking it up and then you partner up with people who already have it, finding the gap. So I think there's so many good lessons to learn just from that conversation on your whole journey. I don't know if you want to double tap into any of that because you seem like you wanted to explain a little bit more on a certain point there, Wim.
I think it's good to realize that, when Peter asked me that, I was at a point. So Peter came 2 years ago, like, I want to build this like modular thing for network discovery, and let's call it Slurp'it. I was at a point with Net, I was like, well, I'm going to stop because, like, at some time it can also wear you down if you try to sell something which the market has grown. Like, this is one thing I wanted to explain. Like, Cisco, the CCNP and the CCIE community grew big because Cisco started the training, right, certification. I think that's generally known. The same thing happened with DevNet certification. So at that time, like a few years ago, then people started to write Python and stuff. So I told my team at the time with NetEyes, like, we should change strategy or stop and just support the current customers or maybe start doing something on the side, a new business or something. So when Peter said it, like, it was a deliberate choice to say, okay, but then we also have to do it to replace the other pillars in NetEyes. So that's where Netpicker came in. And there's going to be network automation like a Netfixer. We need to figure out the name. And it should be modular with existing open source tools and network sources of truth. And I think we also now have this team, like Peter is doing, like Slurp, but we have the other team, we have Otto, which is like the counter. It's like brothers and sister products. And it's amazing how to see how quickly something can be developed. And like you were saying, it's hard to sell. We've tried to sell something complex the hard way. It has given us like a huge, at least for me, a commercial relations in the market over the last 15 or 20 years that we could speed up, like go to market. But now the market is just going for us. It's somehow the communities know how to find us. The name is out there. So it makes my life actually easier at the moment than it used to be.
I think you tap in a concept of habits, right? Habits are inertia. It's really hard to break in Newton's first law, right? Like things stay in constant unless there's an external force that makes it to move. But now that you've moved it over or the community have moved over into this, Python driven and modularized way, then that motion would continue to go until somebody stops it and you guys are just tapping into it. But one thing I find interesting or, I like to, pick your brain on it, Peter, is how do you decide when to stop and when to combine things, right? Like one monolithic doesn't work, but you break it down to 1,000 pieces, it doesn't work either. So now you have Slurp'it, now you have Netpicker, now you have an auto, right? Like, so where does it stop? When does it make sense to do a next thing as opposed to augment the existing thing?
So you mean don't create too many Lego pieces because before you know you have so many.
I think you meant the other way around, didn't you, Eric? Like, when do you stop like adding features in Slurp'it and say, hey, now we're going to add another modular
I think it's both because you rarely see, a company that kind of break into different products, right? So for example, you would have a company and then they'll have different product lines. But versus when I look at Slurp'it and Netpicker, if I didn't talk to you guys, I don't even know they're the same sister companies, right? Like they're just kind of loosely coupled.
I can give you a good example, but I didn't
Sure.
know, but I did some researching because we were looking at how do other business models like this. Well, I'll give you one, HashiCorp,
Okay.
like Terraform, and then there's like 4 or 5 products in there that solve specific problems.
Hmm.
And I think this is what we're trying to build. I mean, Pieter, you already built another project called Mockit, right? Like a network simulator. We're creating now sort of besides Netpicker, is going to be Netfixer, which is just doing the network automation as an orchestrator, storing jobs, Python-based jobs. Let's say UI around Nornir that you can tap into any source of truth and connect to Netpicker and connect to Slurp'it. It's all API driven. So when I think about it, it's like, are you solving a real problem? And I think each of these modular things does. And like I said, HashiCorp did a really good job on actually creating, and they're all belonging together. You wouldn't know that Terraform and some other product name that I don't know.
The no Terraform was part of it. It's the first time I
Yeah.
hear
Yeah.
it.
But they're like a billion company, right? I mean,
Yeah, it's huge. I just didn't know it was HashiCorp. Yeah.
yeah, but they have like a Volk. But the interesting thing is, if you think what they do, I like their vision, but they are like on a layer above. Like so, what we're trying to do for the network layer, they do on the cloud
Hmm.
and like system infrastructure. But there wasn't a company and still isn't. I mean, maybe vendors like Netbox or like not what are trying to build the same thing for the world. But I think my vision, if I have time and we can grow the company, would be something like that, where we're going to add these Lego blocks that really solve a problem that people are willing to pay for, and they cross-sell each other, which is already happening, right? So we get a lead from Slurp'it, and people are like, well, I also need compliance. Well, yeah, compliance is a hot topic. And like in 2 weeks, we're coming out with a service like functionality in Netpicker called vulnerability scan, right? So it's another like Lego block, but integrated in.
I think indirectly, a lot of big companies are doing that already. If you look at Microsoft, like they sell you Teams, but they sell you Dynamic 360 as well, and they also cross each other all the way. But I understand Eric's way. Like, if we stay in the network automation field, like, are we gonna microservice everything, or do we like stack some things? For example, Netpicker has backup and compliance, but we could have separated the backup part, but we didn't do it. So those are like choices to make, I think.
Yeah, but I think that makes sense what you talked about using HashiCorp as an example, right? And I think some of those components were even acquisition. So they went out there and say, what are the complementary services? Do we build it or do we go and buy it? Are they similar enough that we could integrate and so on? So I think that is an interesting topic. I mean, obviously, you guys have made a choice, and it will be really interesting to see your decision points. And I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. And as you mentioned, right, like companies are already doing it.
We had a couple times that I got a feature request coming in saying like, okay, I want to know when something changes in my network that I get an alert. So I was like, okay, we can build alert rules. So we're building alert rules. And then Wim said like, yeah, but Netpicker gets the data from Slurp'it and can see the diff and already has the webhook mechanism built in, and you can build your Python rules. So isn't that conflicting? And I was like, that's a good one. So we do have this discussion sometimes when a feature requests come in, like from both sides. And it's like, okay, but we have to watch out that one is not building functionalities which is already in the other one, because that's not the idea. The idea is, okay, if, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, they complement each other as opposed to cannibalize one of them. Yeah.
But I think it also has to do, I mean, Pieter, you now had this thought about where do we go with the product. So I came up with this pillar where I think of like Slurp'it, discovery, and then validation and automation are like the 3 pillars. And then, so they all integrate into a source of truth of choice, which can be any of the main vendors, right? But what do you do with the data that you get from discovery? Like, so Pieter is announcing later this year something called AI observability, which is sort of an add-on. So it has like, Slurp'it has 3 components then. At the moment, it's discovering devices. Then once you have the devices, it's parsing all the data and normalizing and structuring it with TextFSM. And we onboard this in tools like Netbox. And then on top of it, Pieter will add like the AI capability. And Netpicker is going to his same philosophy where backups is the first piece because we need that for compliance. We can integrate it. It's Python. You can load any kind of SDK. We already had webinars with, I think, with you guys as well, like on Autobot, where you can basically fetch the intent from a system, compare it to the production information, and run a Python test. But if you imagine like where AI observability meets sort of like Python unit-based testing with proactive monitoring, and connect that to auto mitigation, you bundle these three and you get into self-healing networks where, hey, you have data, you have a prompt, you have unit testing, you build a library of all kinds of things that you can think of to validate the state and the intent of your network. And you connect it to store jobs and save jobs to mitigate issues or at least schedule them. So the philosophy is like, okay, we're going to make this modular, but there is a vision to it, which is leading up to self-learning and self-healing networks.
Shall I explain a little bit the idea, Wim,
Yeah, please
with
do.
the testing part? The thing is that with NetEyes, we were always selling network compliance, but now everybody is more moving toward testing, like testing your network. But they're also looking for a way, okay, how can we integrate AI in our network? And it's quite complex because everybody wants to do it. Big vendors are jumping on top of it, but where do you start? So I told Wim, okay, well, we have the testing part. So network engineers should start writing tests for the network the way you write tests for code. So you have an incident, 5 engineers are on top of it, and you find the solution. I don't know, quality of service queue was full or not properly configured. You write a test. So if it happens again, you can just like schedule your tests and okay, it says like, hey, this is the issue. And if you keep doing that inside your company, every time you have a big incident, you write a test. And again, an incident, you write a test. If in those tests you write who's responsible, which department is responsible, what's the solution, what do you have to check, those kind of things. The next step is that you can have AI read the outcome from the test. So let's say the quality of service test fails, then you can give AI like direction, or you can just say, do whatever you want. I don't know exactly the term, I forgot it, but it's better to instruct it what to do than just say, okay, have fun, find the issue, because it's more difficult. So what we want to do is then connect it to those tests, and then you can have it like validate, like it can get from Slurp'it the data from yesterday and the data from now, and say, okay, I see this issue maybe with quality of service, like something has changed. So that's where we want to go to, that it can, based on the failing of the test, knows a little bit like, what do I have to check? What do I have to search for?
Right. I mean, you're not building your own large language model, right? You're certainly augmenting, you're putting more weight into the directional, some people might call it prompt engineering, right? Like you're just directed toward something that's more specific and structured, that AI being the connected tissue between all of your tools. It seems that way. But I'm sorry, I cut you off when you were going to say something.
No, I mean, it's just it's going to be a local language model, right? Because we want to ship it as a container.
Right.
And network people don't like stuff going out to ChatGPT and the OpenAI and stuff like that.
Sometimes it's by regulation, sorry.
No, but that's like where I love working with Pieter and also Otto and the rest of the team. Like modern guys, they know software development. They know how the current way of things work, right? With building local language models or whatever, using Git and using Docker and all these kind of things. But yeah, I think just want to point out that the local language model is going to be just a part of this. So the idea was like building a library of tests over time that are specific to your network, to your company, to the knowledge that people have gained from solving issues. We already have, like, if you go to Netpicker, you can see it. It's on the public repro. We already have a library out of the box for Cisco CIS, right? And some CVEs. But there will be, think of it, if you do this for your own company, for your own network design checks and design validation and intent-based checks and proactive monitoring tests, you'll have a library that can run in literally seconds offline, because every time we do the backups and show commands and we have the Slurp'it data, it's so quick. I mean, you can run these tests automatically and you get notified on failing and succeeding test. It's going to be a different way, we believe, of using. I remember Jeremy Schulman sort of doing this design-driven assurance. I wouldn't say it's identical, but same philosophy. You want to run tests to check whether everything is okay. So, but these are specific for your network. These are specific to how you solved an issue in the past. So at least that's something we want to promote out there, this library of tests integrated to the Slurp'it tools and the AI tools, and to connect it to auto mitigation jobs that you can make changes as well.
Everything you guys talked about sounds great. And I think it's, totally market driven. You guys had the scars to show for it. That, hey, we got burned, and that's why we're trying to do it better this time, right? I enjoy that. However, you mentioned that you're not VC funded, right? You don't have millions of dollars that to go out and do these developments. So how do you guys keep on top of it? When do you say yes for A and say no to B? Back to the HashiCorp example, when do you decide that this is a product that we break out and we spend X amount of time on? Because that means you're taking time away from developing further into Slurp'it and Netpicker, right?
So what we currently do is that I have, like in the past, I started a couple other companies where I have income from, and I have my consultancy stuff on the side. So what we do now is actually all the money that comes in from Slurp'it and Netpicker as well, we reinvest So Wim and I are both not taking any salary, any money out of it. Everything that comes in is immediately being reinvested. So integrations with Naudobot, integrations with Netbox, like we hire freelancers, we hire contractors full time to help us like grow the company. So we have a very flexible scale, like we can easily scale up, scale down.
Yeah.
The moment we get more customers in, we scale up. So this is kind of the way we have been doing it at the moment.
People question this quite a lot, actually, Eric, when we speak to other vendors. They're like, there's no other tool vendor in this space that has done it like we did.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, we have been able to survive all these years with NetEyes. We had customers, we had paying customers. Sometimes we survived on professional services, on projects work that we did with the NetEyes platform. We basically are moving completely away from that. And every customer is a subscription that we now sell, and we're trying to upsell. So it becomes easier and easier on the revenue side because we're upselling a Slurp'it lead that becomes a customer with Netpicker, and now with AI observability, later on with automation, and then maybe a CVE vulnerability service. So it becomes the same customer once you have it. I remember some CEO at some stage saying, like, the difficulty is to win a customer. Once you have it, it's easy to upsell because you're giving value to what you bring. And I think that's what we're trying to do. I just want to say, like, if at some stage it's required, we do need some kind of funding to don't miss out on the market at the moment. We're also open to look at it, right? I mean, for me, the market in the US is like a huge market where I was talking to Pieter, like, well, at the moment, the leads come in and we can support them and we can sell them, but we might want to maybe have an office there and support team to tap into.
Every choice we do, every time with everything, Wim and I are like, okay, everything we do, we have to do it smart. So we're not just going to hire random people to do the marketing. Like, okay, what's needed for the marketing? What do we want to achieve? How can we do it smart and efficient? And that's what we keep doing. And that's why we can easily like follow actually our big competitors and stuff out there, because we are like continuously rethinking like, okay, this is the process. Is it still smart? Can we improve it? And how can we do it in a way that it's actually scalable and flexible?
We don't want to spend too much money, Eric. I think
Hey, if you take VC money, it's somebody else's money, right? If you're not taking salary, reinvesting your own money into it, it's your money and you gotta spend it more smart. No offense out there for people who are VC backed and all that, right? But like for me, I'm a big fan of bootstrapping. I'm a big fan of not taking VC money until you grow to a certain size, especially at your guys' stage. You already have a customer base, you have a revenue. So now if you do take VC money, you're going to have better valuation. As the MIT professor, Bill Olley would say, you nailed it before you scale it, right? So now you nailed it. And if you need to scale it, it's easier to take that money and you get better valuation. So I'm a big fan of that. Actually, I don't mean to say that in a negative way, right? I'm just generally curious. It's like, how do you guys bootstrap it?
But that's a bit where we are now, right, Wim?
exactly.
We work hard. Like we make a lot of hours because I also develop myself and with team, like you continuously, like you have to analyze the market, you have to build. And now we're in a way that we're like, first time you're investing and now you're growing. And now it's the time where we are, Wim and I, like continuously looking like, okay, do we go for VC? Do we not go for VC? Because we're at the point that we need to
really scale up.
Scale up. Yeah.
I mean, the number of leads, but also actually number of customers that have signed up, and well, the size of companies, like customers, we're like, man, this is amazing. Like all over the world with different types of networks. We're really honored that the products gain adoption and that customers are. If you look at the Slack channels, I mean, some are raving customers of Slurp'it, definitely, and they love Pieter and the support team on that. So all compliments to what Pieter has built. He's nailing it, like you said, Eric. And then the question is, at some stage, you need to scale. But I'm also a bit afraid. That's what I wanted to say, is that
giving up control. Yeah.
Actually, no. But I think at the moment, and Pieter knows this, we are so quick with stuff we think and create and develop. Pieter is like genius in how to find the right people to develop maybe a plugin and project manage what gets delivered and quality control it and scale it, and with a relatively small team, right? So I know if you get a lot of money, you start hiring people, and before you know it, you have team meetings and you're not productive anymore. But at the same time, you need to scale to do marketing and sales at some stage, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a hard problem.
Yeah.
Now, we don't want to be too corporate, we want to be like, did you watch this TV show, Silicon Valley?
Yes.
Yeah, there they have like, they have in the beginning, like, okay, they want to be punk rock and they don't want to become like corporate. And it's like, it's a bit where we are now. Like we're punk rock, but we're growing. So you move small toward corporate, and we want to be aware a little bit of that.
I get that. I mean, when I talk to other entrepreneurs, right, like they go into entrepreneurship because they don't want to be corporate. They don't want to wear suits every day or being bogged down by meetings. So at a point where, maybe they do need more structure, they do need more like grown-ups in the room, right? Like Wim is that grown up. But
Thank you.
he's young in heart, but anyways, you know what I mean. It is a dilemma, and I meet a lot of different entrepreneurs because that's my passion, right? Like I go out and I have a master's in entrepreneurship from UW, and meeting all these VCs and all of that. So yeah, I do see that as a interesting dilemma, right? Like my professor would say, there's like a mighty middle, if you will, like blitz growth, where it's like all VC just scale up and grow at all expenses. There's like I don't want to say lifestyle business, right? But it's a self-sustained business that you favor control over unhindered growth. And then there's the mighty middle where you kind of find the growth middle of that. And I'm actually the fan of the mighty middle. Yeah, no, I mean, it's very interesting. You guys are in a good place on a lot of a very envious place, really, right? A lot of inbounds that are driving, and that all started from your mindset of being modular, doing things different.
Daring to start over. I think that was the crucial point 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Just want to add, I think there's also the middle. I like what you say, Eric,
Yeah.
because I'm a believer, like if you have two choices, you have not really a choice. You need to create a third and a fourth and a fifth option. So even like, okay, we are self-funded or VC, I'm a big believer, like there must be different ways, and there are, right? So I think we need to find our way in the next few years to grow this. And because the market is definitely enjoying it. And I think with the knowledge and the team that we have, we are still at the beginning of creating great stuff. So we just want to keep moving this forward.
And I'm rooting for you guys. I think it's so different to see this new branch of a third way forward where it's not just all VC funded, growing, blitz growth, and then there's all, bootstrapping, and we all know who those companies are. And then now you guys are trying to trailblaze. So I'm totally rooting for you guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I think we covered a little bit about where Slurp'it came from, where your mission, your kind of vision, the how and why you guys started it. So where do you guys see going forward? I know there are more products coming out with the AI connective tissue that you talked about and new products. So what else is out there that you guys see on the next step? Maybe just for Slurp'it and Netpicker.
Well, I was just sending an email earlier today to, I think, to Drew and Beckett. But we had a call because they're doing the media stuff on AutoCon.
Mm-hmm.
I was summarizing what we're going to be announcing in the next months.
Okay.
So already delivering.
Yeah.
So I think, Peter, you can maybe explain your piece on the.
We should say we're recording this early November of 2024. And because of the backlog, by the time this released, it will probably be early 2025. So yeah, if you're open for it, we're happy to be part of that story.
Yeah, sure. So the current strategy has always been like try to be the WhatsApp of tools so that we integrate with everything, that we work on everything, like not on your phone, but with all the existing systems. And now we are almost there. We want to put our own footprint so that we together, like Slurp'it and Netpicker, are also like on their own a very powerful solution and not just for integration.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, Wim, that's what you mentioned. It's the self-healing networks. So we're really going to focus toward first having a tool to automate to when something is wrong in your network that we can also correct it. So by just reconfiguring stuff, both for traditional networks, but also for API-based controlling networks. I think that's a very important one.
Yeah.
And when that base is standing there, parallel, we're going to work on the local language models for AI so that eventually you can put Slurp'it on your network, Netpicker on your network, and the local AI module, which will then together like do self-healing networks. That's what we want to go toward.
Yeah, it's not just a buzzword. I mean, I see a path forward.
And just to add on that, I mean, Peter, you already built Slurp'it plugins just to make it a bit more specific, right? On what is it, Netbox, Naudobot, and InfraHub. So that's going to be released, new plugins and new syncer tools. But we're going to add 2 new ones probably next year as well, like Infoblox and ServiceNow.
Oh, okay.
They're on my wish list, and on Peter's wish list.
Now you're just voluntold, man. Peter, you're just voluntold.
He's doing a great job. So he knows this. But I think the first one is going to be on Infoblox. We already have a system in our lab spin up. We know how the API works. We need whatever we can provision from Slurp'it, like IPAMs and all the IPAM data. Let's provision this into, it's not a competitive to Netbox, but it's like an IPAM system, right? The Infoblox system. So, and I think with Netpicker, it's going to extend into the automation. So we want to be able to fix what we're going to find, right? So if all the PyTests that we're using with Netpicker and running non-compliancy results, you want to be able to tie like a stored job, like, okay, I'm going to be able, if this happens again, I'm going to kick off this job to fix the board and shut down the board or encrypt the passwords or whatever you want to do, right? So that's where it starts. being very pragmatic, like, okay, I have a job engine. I'm going to be able to store my jobs. They're going to be template based. They're going to be Jinja based, Python based, Nornir under the hood. And I can connect them either with Slurp'it data or with netbooks or Notbot data. So that's how these pieces we envision, like, and it's not difficult because Netpicker already is like a Python based framework. So with a scheduler, you can just load Nornir and then just make a UI on top of it to do approvals and job scheduling. And you have a deployment engine like Ansible, but then for Nornir, so to speak.
Only Nornir, Wim, not Ansible?
Well, Ansible later on, but yeah, it's Python. So
Yeah.
we're going to start off with Nornir. But yeah, the hope is that you can also reuse your Ansible playbooks. And we already have customers that are using Slurp'it and Netpicker asking for it. It's like, oh man, it would be great. I can reuse all my scripts for my automation and just load them. And there's revision control, and we store it in Git. And then we make use of all the modern things.
But that will also solve another problem where we see a lot in the networks, actually, that people have a lot of custom scripts running on servers and they're a bit all over the place. So with, Netpicker, you already have all your testing scripts in one place. So if you do something similar for the automation, it can be quite simple. But then at least you have one place where everything is with a GUI and there is Git support, and you can just with your own VS Code work against it. You can just push it out. But yeah, it goes in the Git of the new solution. So we have everything organized. So that will for sure coming out next year.
Very cool. Very cool. Oh, well, like I said, I'm rooting for you guys. I think it's very different and you certainly have a product roadmap. It's really just how to prioritize, right? Like which one do you do first? And that is always like the $1,000,000 question is, how do we get there on, like you said, for your customers? So, I mean, we could probably talk for another 2 hours on this because I'm a fan and you guys are nice people. But we do have to wrap it up somehow. Where can people find you? Where can people follow you online to follow your work? Well, why don't we start with you, Wim? Where can people follow or, want to know more about Slurp'it, Netpicker, and all the other following up products?
Yeah, I mean, netpicker.io, I think same slurpit.io, but people that are more into Slack, you'll find them, the Slack. If you go to our website, you can find the Slack links we're mainly in the NetDev community. That's where we started growing. And there's a hashtag Slurp'it, hashtag Netpicker. You'll find us. You can ask questions. You see all the historical questions. And if you have a question on support at slurpit.io or support at netpicker.io. Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else to add, Pieter? Maybe
LinkedIn, Wim?
Yeah, LinkedIn. True. Yeah, LinkedIn. Yeah, just please they always say, like the pages.
Follow the company.
We try to post like everything on both LinkedIn and Slack. I'm actually working on a Discord channel as well.
Okay.
Because I figured out Slack is big in the States, but outside America, I see that Slack is not that big. So I'm trying to find some middle ground there, but maybe spinning up a Discord channel as well. It's a bit difficult. So Eric, if you have a great business idea, I'm looking for a way to integrate all the channels in like one little thingy.
That would be a big help.
There is Twitter, X, there is, there is Discord, there is Slack, there is Link. Every time I post something, I have to visit everything.
That's a few pay grades above my brain to reach. But yeah, if Elon Musk could solve it, who am I? But
it's probably a marketing tool out there for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, it's been a pleasure. I really enjoy our conversation. Thank you guys both for being here. We'll post all the links, the LinkedIn links and Slurp'it and Netpicker's URL on our website. And it's been a pleasure. Thanks again for being here, guys.
Thanks, Eric.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, that was lovely. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Network Automation Nerds. Do you have any feedbacks for Network Automation, our guests, Wim and Pieter today, or this episode in particular? Please send us some follow-ups at packetpushers.net/FU, where the FU stands for follow-up, of course. We really do want to hear from you. And please do check out our website at packetpushers.net to find other network engineering focused podcasts, blogs, YouTube videos, and so much more. You can find podcasts such as Network Break for weekly news, Heavy Networking for deep dive into networking technology knowledge, Packet Protector for security, and so much more. And again, we really appreciate you listening, the wonderful listeners. Please rate us on Apple Podcasts or any other podcatcher that you listen your podcast on. Last but not least, remember that too much network automation will never be enough.